Hi guys, and welcome to Module 4. Now that we've pretty much got the basics down, some basic statistics, I know that it's still a little shaky, but that will come together over time and with practice. We've recognized and developed some searching strategies and learned how to formulate a PICO question. And now we're going to actually begin to critically appraise research articles. This is the fun part. So for Module 4, we are going to focus on beginning to critically appraise 5 articles total. One, as I mentioned, will be a one that we'll all do together. It is a group article. You will complete the article up to the method section. You will post it in the first discussion point or discussion thread by the end of the week, and you'll give each other feedback, and I'll give you all feedback. So the point of doing that is so that I get an idea of where you're at with understanding how to complete a critical appraisal using a CAP worksheet that is very familiar with occupational therapy. It also gives you all a chance to take a look and see what everybody is doing with their writing and to get comfortable with it, because on your other 4 you're going to do those separately, and they will be based on the PICO question that you put together, and the articles will be something on a topic that you're interested in. So I want to get you kind of accustomed to what we're doing, and then once I give you feedback and you kind of look at each other's, you'll move forward and complete your own or the rest of your 4 and turn it all in it together. Now, as you know, we're only going up again to the method section, and then in Module 5, we will finish those caps out completely with going through the results, the conclusion, and adding any other discussion that should be added. So let me go ahead and just kind of walk you through a little bit. So as you know, we're in Module 4. It's kind of each Module 4 and Module 5 will be 2 weeks long, okay? Down here in this critical appraisal instructions worksheet and overview, if you click on that folder, I put pretty much what you need to complete this. You have the instructions, you have a guide or worksheet that will help you, and then you have the actual CAP worksheet. So let's look at these two things that I have here. I already have them pulled up. So when you click on them, this is what will come up. For the first one, this critically appraise this critically appraising worksheet can actually be found in your Fetters textbook. So as you know, page 41. Now this is just a guide. I want you to kind of get an understanding of what you're looking at when you're critically appraising for method section. Now I know there is one question here that says results section, but the study population sometimes is in the method section too. The point is, you will use the study population sample for your method section. So this is trying to give you an idea of where to find it. Now, not all research articles are technically the same, so some of this may be vice versa. But you're going to read through the entire article anyways, so there shouldn't be an issue. And it's just a good way to kind of continue to go through the article. But this asks a series of questions, so a series of questions. So as you're reading your articles, here's some things to think about. Check off yes or no. I would note where you found it. And then here are some comments on what you should be looking for. So this is simply a guide, okay? I want you to have something to help you walk through to complete your CAP. Now this does not have to be turned in with your 5 critical appraisals at the end of the method section. This is again simply a guide, but it's a good guide, and it gives you an idea of what you're looking for and where to find it and kind of why. Now what you're going to actually use or turn in is this critically appraised paper CAP worksheet. This is a very familiar worksheet that is used in occupational therapy and for a lot of doctorate programs, especially with like ATOA. These are what would be completed and turned in for publishing. So this is the sheet that we're going to practice using, because this is a sheet that you will probably become familiar with over time. Now, I'm going to walk you through this sheet, but I'm not going to give you the exact answers because I want to see what you guys can come up with, and then I'll give you feedback in your discussion post, and I'll let you know how you did. And then again, It's a great time to look at everyone else's and see what everyone else is writing to kind of compare to each other. Now this sheet is very well written, and it's simply you taking information from the article and then putting it into there. So this is the article that we are looking at. It's called Randomized Controlled Trial Comparing Tailoring Methods of Multimedia-Based Fall Prevention Education for Community Dwelling Older Adults. This article can also be found in your Module 4 under that same critical appraisal here. You don't see it now, but I will make sure the article is added, so no worries. Back to the article. Now, I picked this one because it's a little easier than maybe some of the ones that we initially looked at, but I think it's a great overview and example to kind of walking into critically appraising a research article. So let's talk about this a little bit. You know what's in an article by this point. You have your abstract that gives you an overview of what they're talking about, keywords of what they used, would use to define it for this article. And then you have your introduction, your literature review that explains why they're doing this, where all of the past research, what all the past research has summarized, and then how that leads into doing this research now, or why they did the research. Okay, so you're very familiar with this portion. Now, here's your method section. Okay, it's very well written in a sense that it's all put out there for exactly what you need. As you see, here's the design, participants and setting, and this is what I mean. For population, sometimes you will find it in the method section, as you will find it in here. Okay, materials, procedures. What happened? What did they do? Materials. What did they use? What type of testing? What was done? They'll talk about the different groups. They'll talk about, or groups as far as who was control, who was in intervention, how many, assessments, what did they do, what did they use, any additional materials for the patients, data collection, data analysis. And then that's where we're going to stop. We're going to stop at results. Okay? I mean, still read it because you may need just a little bit of information from here, but for the most part, I purposely picked this article so that it stops where you need it to stop. Okay? So now let's take a closer look at this CAP worksheet. Now, first and foremost, you're going to enter the citation, APA style, and the DOI number, okay? That's pretty simple. Now, clinical bottom line. You're going to briefly discuss how the evidence relates to occupational therapy practice within the scope of traditional or emerging practice, and how can practitioners use evidence related to the target population and practice setting. I want you to summarize from the information that you have of why this is essential, or how can you use this for practice, and why is it important to occupational therapy. Okay, list the research objectives. What are the aims? What is the purpose of this research? Then you're going to look at the design type and level of evidence. Now, I know from your readings you'll learn about level of evidence, and you should be somewhat familiar with the design types, as you will see some of this in my lectures that you will read or listen to depending on what you decide to do, because it is a talking lecture as well. But I talk about the different type of research designs, and as you know, just from reading this, I can tell you now, and because you will see when you read the article, this is, as we know, because it has here we go. As it says in the design type, we know it's a randomized controlled trial. Okay? And in this particular case, this is a 3-group randomized control trial. So as you will notice, there are 2 interventional groups and 1 control group. And this was actually a pretty interesting article, so I hope you guys find it interesting as well. So the design type and level of evidence will essentially be where in the hierarchy is this type of research. We know it's a RCT, a randomized controlled trial, and as I've said many times before, randomized controlled trials are the gold standard. It's directly below systematic reviews. So actually, you could just simply say that and know that that's the answer as well. But think about it and you know, make sure you write that information in there. So in this case, this is a randomized control trial, and that would be considered a level 1. I don't know if you remember looking at the Dynamed website, but it talks about the different levels of research as well. So this is a randomized control trial, and this is considered a level 1. If you want to review those levels again, I can give you that snapshot from Dynamed. Sample selection. How were subjects recruited and selected to participate? Again, you will find that when they talk about participants and setting, and a little bit in the design. Sample characteristics. Now they will talk about this throughout the paper, and you're simply going to put the number in there. How many people? Remember what this N means. How many people are in the study? Number of males and number of females, or if they give percentages, put the percentages. Who did they recruit for this, and was there any disease or disability diagnosis that we should consider? Now, since we are looking at therapy studies, I want to know about the interventions and the control groups. So in this case, there are already 3 on here. Now just keep in mind, for your research articles, you may not have 3 groups. You may have just 2. So in that case, you can simply take this box and you can delete the box. Otherwise, if you have 3, you will leave the 3. And as it says here, if you need more, just simply add another box. You can also, there you go. Click the box, copy, and make another box. But we know there are 3. So in this case, there were 2 interventional groups. So you will go in detail about each interventional group, and then you will also talk about the control group. Now it's your decision whether you want to do control first and then the 2 interventions, or if you want to do intervention, control, intervention. I would either stick with doing control and then the 2 interventions, or the 2 interventions and then the control. But it's your decision how you put that in there. So you're going to go through the article and see where it talks about the different interventions. And you're going to explain that as well as the control group. You want to put that detailed information in these boxes. And it says, briefly describe the intervention, how many participants in the group, where did the intervention take place, who delivered, how often, for how long. Now remember, you're going to do that for each group that's in your randomized control trial. The next session of this CAP is intervention bias. Now for this, there are different type of biases that are listed, and you're going to look for those biases. If there is that bias, or you feel like there is that bias, you're going to click yes, and you're going to comment why. If no, you're going to simply click no. Or you can choose to click NR if needed, not related. And if you want to know, or I'm sorry, not reported, that NR is up here too if you're not sure what that NR means. So this is where you're going to put this. Now I know you're probably wondering, what are the definitions of these different biases? So also included in that section, I am going to list a slide for you that talks about the different biases. Now let's look at the different biases. Sorry. You have contamination bias, and this occurs when members of the control group, sorry, my screen is black, inadvertently receives the treatment or are exposed to intervention, thus potentially minimizing the difference in outcomes between the group. That's a bias. And essentially what that means is someone is contaminating the data or someone is contaminating the trial. Co-intervention bias. It occurs when some subjects receive other unaccounted for interventions at the same time as that of the study. Now, as you know, with studies, we do our best to control as much as we can. We have an inclusion and an exclusion. And that is important because we make sure that we base our population based on the characteristics that we want to see and don't want to see within this study. They have to have this or can't have that. That is what inclusion and exclusion is. And you want to be as specific as possible to make sure that you have a well-written and controlled trial. Now, if you have patients who have additional interventions that aren't noted and that are not supposed to be a part of the study treatment, well, that's co-intervention bias. That doesn't help us find out what we need to know, and it makes it hard to assess if the intervention that we were really looking at actually worked. Timing bias. Sorry. Different issues related to the timing of intervention can be biased. If an intervention is provided over a long period of time, or if the duration of the treatment is very short, there may not have been sufficient time for noticeable effect in the outcomes of interest. Timing is very important. We generally work a lot of this information out ahead of time. We have an idea of how long a procedure should take or how long an intervention should take, and we record that information so we know what are the timelines that are we looking at. When you don't follow these rules, that just gives you another instance of a type of bias that you can have. Compliance. That one is pretty much as it sounds. When patients are, just think of a patient being compliant at a regular clinic visit. The same thing goes in a research article. When you have different subjects that don't adhere to the planned treatment or the intervention or just the study in general, it becomes an issue. And then that's how you get dropout rates and dropout patients. That also will affect your overall study. Withdrawal bias, when patients decide that they just don't want to do the research anymore, and that's perfectly okay. That is, in a sense, that it is allowed. When we have patients sign a consent form, one of the things that is stated on the consent form and told to them verbally, because it's very important, is that this is completely voluntary. You do not have to participate in this research. And should you at any time decide you do not want to participate in this research, you are more than welcome to say so, and you simply just have to say, I don't want to participate anymore, and we have to let that patient go. We cannot ever force a patient to stay in a research trial. However, dropouts make a difference. It will affect the overall data. Now, we have measurement bias. Measurement bias can arise from an error in the data collection and or the process of measuring. What type of tools are they using? What is the background of that tool and the assessor that what is the background of the tool that is being used? Has it been proven to be reliable and valid? And do they mention that? And who are the raters? Do they have experience? Did they make an error? How many are doing it? Is it consistent? And last but not least, we on this particular form, we are going to look at site bias. And a good example of site bias is understanding, where was the study conducted? Was it always done at the same site? Or were there instances where patients probably couldn't make it to the site, so they did the intervention at the house? Or was it so that one of the options was to do the intervention at home? So these are some of the biases that you'll look at when you're reading your research articles, and you will note on this CAP whether there was a bias or not. The goal is to make sure that there is little as bias as possible. Now, there are more biases than just these that we're looking at, so don't think these are the only ones, but these are the ones that the CAP focuses on, okay? Next, you're going to look at the use of different therapists to provide intervention. And that kind of goes with measurement bias. who's doing what, who's rating, who's doing the therapy. Is it the same person or is it multiple people? Now, measures and outcomes. And I know you don't see measurement bias up here, but as we go down, you will see it down here. Okay? All right, so now let's talk about measures and outcomes. So we want to know what was the measure that was being completed and what was the outcome. Again, is it reliable? Is it valid? And when was the measure used? Now, this is a good time to go back and use that. If you're not as familiar with the measure or tool that is being used, I don't know if you remember, but I gave you a website called Rehab Measures. This database, as you know, is home to 1,000,001 tools that you can use. Okay? And if you want to look more into that tool, you can. And as you know, you can either search individually, which we did try and struggled with a little bit, or otherwise you can just go in the database and look. And once you click on it, it will tell you anything and everything you need to know about that type of assessment. The type of reviewers that would be done, the purpose of it, description, and then all additional information that would help you decide, is that tool reliable and valid? And the purpose of this is that when we use different tools, there has to be studies, or there should be studies before that have been conducted to show that this tool is the tool that we should be using for this type of research. If this tool doesn't help us make a decision on what we're looking at, well then that tool isn't valid and reliable for what we're looking for. So you can take a look at this. Again, this website is rehabmeasures.org. So if you're not as familiar with some of the tools that you're going to be seeing within the research articles that you're looking at, and you need a little more information, use this website. It's a very useful website. And it also helps within your clinical practice when you just need to know more about the tool in general. It's a great resource, so I would advise using it. So back to this. Simple. You're going to put in what was being measured. If there's multiple measures, you're going to put that in there. If there's more than 3, you can always, again, add a box. If there's less than 3, then delete a box. Add and delete as you need to make sure that you're capturing all the information from that article that is necessary to complete your critical appraisal. Now here's a section where you're going to look at measurement bias. You're going to look at measurement and recall or memory bias. And the same thing as you did up here for interventional biases or biases. You're going to check yes or no or not reported. And if there are other things, you can list and explain them here. Now that's where you are going to stop. You are not going to complete anything further than this. And results and moving downward will be focused on in Module 5. So hopefully this helps. If you guys have any questions, again, don't hesitate to contact me at any time. If you need me to walk you through this together, we can. I am perfectly fine with that. And that's why we're going to do one together so that you can get an idea of how to use the form and walk through it. I provided you with an article. You all will use the same article to complete the first one, and I think it's fairly simple and easy to walk through. I will provide you with what should be in this after the fact, but I want to give you a chance to just play around and really try your best to write a good first critical appraisal. And again, it will be a draft because I will give you feedback on it, but it will be a good way to practice and make you more familiar and more comfortable with the actual 4 that will be related to your PICO question. Okay? Good luck, everybody. Let's get down to business.